we've talked about this before, that I know you're a total Trekkie.
Yes, I am. 1,000%.
I know.
So does it break your heart that Mr. Takai is such a shit lib of the highest order? Like when you talk about the head of the class, if you will, like, yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of Star Wars fans who are beside themselves as to what a shit lib Mark Hamill turned out to be. I will give Hamill a little credit, though. He does do a lot. Like, he's a very considerate person. Like, he understands the magnitude of.
You're just bitter because of Bruce.
No.
Okay.
No, I accept the fact that Bruce is just not the guy we want him to be.
So disappointing.
You know, but Hamill, Hamill, unlike Shatner, completely embraces who he is and what he represents to millions of people.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I like him anyway.
Sure. No, he does good stuff, but at the same time, you know, he is affected by TDS, much like Mr. Takai is. And I can't help but think, even though there's a lot of issues with Trump, there are the magnitude of the problems that exist outside of the Trump derangement is so significant at this point. And the fact that they pretend like it's not going on, something as simple, and this is, I guess, you know, we don't even need to pull up the article, but we can just discuss as a point of emphasis, you know, we realize just how privileged these individuals are. And they try to pretend like they're not. They try to act like they really understand what the average person is thinking about right now. And I was thinking about how we can correlate this to their overreaction to the Washington Post not formally endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Yeah. And there are many reasons as to why Bezos decided not to do this. Now, I am of the mind, because I believe in the billionaire class, they literally are 10 steps ahead of everybody else. All trends point to Trump ultimately winning, and he doesn't want to get on the bad side of the Donald right now because he's been on his bad side for quite some time. And Lord knows, with Musk really ingratiating himself to him, there's multi-billion-dollar contracts for government, you know, deals as far as you know, cloud tech resources are concerned. So there's a lot of ways to look at this from a logistical standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint, I'm canceling my Washington Post subscription. But how dare these people do this?
Can I just say, I don't think that, and I don't understand this. I've never understood this. And I'm somebody who went to journalism school. So I don't understand why papers endorse candidates. That's not, I don't think that's supposed to be the thing to do. Papers are supposed to report. I don't understand why they would be endorsing a candidate. I don't understand that.
I don't. Okay, well, two things.
An individual, fine, maybe an individual, but
I really think the liberal thing is just all the Star Trek. Like, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with what is it, Delaney, the one that plays Q. And I remember he came to me. We were at a convention at a what is it called? Comic-Con.
I don't know, but he was also Days of Our Lives. Just saying.
Was he?
Oh yes, he was one of the OGs on Days of Our Lives, and so I know exactly who that is.
Yeah, I love his characters. And Q is one of my favorites. And it broke my heart when he says, "Are you telling people to vote for?" I think at the time it was it Clinton? I think it was Clinton, and I was like, "No, I'm not." And he was like, "But Donald Trump is a threat. We must stop him from getting into office." And I said, well, people have different reasons for voting for who they vote for. How am I going to tell people that they should vote for this person or that person? And not to mention, I didn't like Clinton myself. And it's very possible that Whoopi, Takai, all of those guys were just Democrats. It's just they were liberals. Yeah. As for the billionaire thing is weird to me. In the old days, the billionaires were content with staying behind the scenes and putting money into somebody's pocket, saying, all right, go out there and represent me. Go out there and, you know, tell people to vote or tell people to do X and Y. And there was this kind of handshake between the politician, the billionaire, and the public. So the billionaire gives the guy a bunch of money, and he goes out and represents the billionaire point of view, whatever that point of view is, moderated by what he thinks he can get through the finish line, meaning to the public, what he can sell to the public. And he goes to the billionaire and says, hey, I need you to support me for this. I need to get this policy. This is the only way I can get elected. And it was this kind of handshake. And they were content to be behind the scenes. Somewhere along the way, that changed. So you get Miriam Adelson, who's giving Trump $100 million to annex the West Bank. You get Elon Musk, who's given 75 billion. You get, Bill Gates, that apparently is given 50 million to democratic causes. This is very weird. The newspaper thing is another effect of that. You get Bezos, who puts the green, basically saying, hey, I'm squashing this notion of you putting out the thing with the endorsement. Same thing with LA Times. LA Times did it because that man did not like the fact that the Biden administration was backing a genocide. And he was like, I am not accepting this model of things, nor am I going to reward the party for backing a genocide, going with their own political history as to why that was a red line for him. I don't know if I have an issue with the paper endorsing. Papers have a point of view, if that makes sense. Like the New York Post has a point of view. The New York Times has a certain point of view. I don't know. I don't know if I like this notion of billionaires influencing the news. Like, for example, I know the thought is that if you're working at Sputnik at RT, that you're immediately a robot for so-and-so and that you're functioning for those causes. That wasn't really the case. They didn't really exert editorial control. The only thing that our boss used to do is make sure that we got it right. He used to flip out if we got it wrong. Like if we are reporting a story and we had a guest on that was obviously talking out of there. Can we curse on this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If we had a guest that was obviously talking out of their ass, it would be like, okay, that person is a humiliation. Why is that person on air? It would be that. It wasn't, you must take this point of view, because you had people who went across the gambit in regards to their point of view. I don't even know how you would have an editorial thing on like a Sputnik, short of, we don't like war. Maybe that would have been a comment and a candidate based on that. So I don't know if I have an issue with papers doing that. I'm more weirded out by this notion of them continuously telling us, no, the fact that a billionaire owns a newspaper doesn't really matter at all to the content that they're putting out. And then when we get to the election and they're like, billionaires are saying, no, you're not going to put this out. No, you're not going to put this out. There was another one recently, another paper that came out also saying, we're not going to put out an editorial. I don't know. That's creepy to me. That's super creepy to me. But what is your take on it?
Well, I don't think that I don't like the idea of news papers. And yeah, I understand that they can have their opinion and they can have their opinion about something, but that's different than the idea of an endorsement. I find that the idea of endorsing a character, or that's what I feel like they are characters, a candidate, is just, there's something just so not journalistic about it. But yes, the whole problem is who's owning all these publications, and that the fourth estate is dead and has been completely bought by the same people that bought, Congress, the executive branch, and SCOTUS. So it's just that now there is nothing. And it's interesting that you'll hear people criticize like media in China as like state media, and it's state media. And I'm thinking, I try to watch news from every continent as much as possible. Like, so I have certain stations that I watch that are in China. Their news is just fine. A little dry, but just fine. And I don't, it's amazing to me that the idea, we've brainwashed people to that idea of socialism, communism, state media, when what we have is state media. Because the oligarchy that owns the state is also owning the media. How is that not state media?
No, agreed. And when you're looking for the network, we had to look at news from a world perspective. So we would be Indian newspaper, Chinese newspaper, South American, in the States there, depending upon the news, what was going on. Africa was always fascinating. Then the US does function like a state media organization. If anything that's dealing with foreign policy, we represent the interests of the state. And it goes across the board. So, for example, the recent story, there are North Koreans rummaging through Russia. Okay, well, why is that necessary? Ukraine is the one with the manpower shortage. Why would that be necessary? But they would take it up because Ukraine said it. Or they would say the way they would moderate stories for Israel, where they would say this kind of muted, neutral language for people getting slaughtered en masse. Or like CNN doing a report where they were talking about the plight of the Israeli IDF soldier. And one of the guys they were using to talk about how difficult it was to be an IDF soldier was a guy who was in a a thing, riding over hundreds of living people. And it's like, oh, he has such a hard time living with what he had to go through in the war. It's like, okay,
Good.
one, he was running over people with a bulldozer. Let's be honest, call it what it is. This is not necessarily a case of woe is me. This is a case of somebody basically committing, horrible crimes. Like, that's what I mean, though. It's like when it's something dealing with the interests of the state, we function, particularly Ethiopia, another really good one, where the TPLF attacks the Ethiopian government and the US media is reporting it as if it's somehow the Abiy Ahmed government that's responsible for being attacked. It's super bizarre in the way that state media and that state apparatus functions. Or either, I don't know if you saw the report recently where it was a British reporter was talking to a Russian diplomat. And she's like, hey, do you think that you guys are going to be able to keep going because of how bad things are going? And as he pointed out to her, we have moved up to like number 5 in the realm of nation economies, and you guys have fallen to number 10. What are you talking about? Like, it's very bizarre in the way that we function with that stuff. And we were like, well, those are state media apparatuses, so those are clearly biased. Sorry, your media is also biased. Deeply so.
Yeah, I feel like we live in an alternate reality. It really is like I feel like it's the Hunger Games, and we're the capital, and so we only know what we know.
Yes.
Like, and it's really, so for anybody who has not been outside the capital, there's no concept of reality. It's like the Matrix. It's any of those, right? And it's really true, because this is why I think it's so important for people to watch media on other continents, as best as possible. Because people really in this country that just stick to our media they're just so beyond ignorant.
Well, the other thing that I also noticed, and I had no idea that the number of subscribers to WAPO that had decided to cancel their subscription was so substantial. Obviously, we saw all the people that went absolutely apeshit regarding making their formative announcements on social media saying, I officially leave the Washington Post because you did not confirm my political bias, because that's really all it is. And I would use this as a good example, because there may come a point in the future where I might run for political office, for example. And the way I look at it is simply this, and I know he's the worst type of example because of what an ogre he is as a human being. But let's say, for example, that Pennsylvania ultimately makes or breaks this presidential election. I do believe, especially if Trump wins Pennsylvania, then it's a done deal. And so let's say, for the sake of argument, that John Fetterman decided, I'm not going to be involved in this race. I'm not going to endorse anybody. I'm not going to endorse Kamala. Well, then the vote blue no matter who crowd would actually have a leg to stand on in terms of their ire, because they could say, we door knocked, we donated, we did all these things to help you get into the U.S. Senate. And when we need your help to help us win the state of Pennsylvania, you're not going to lift a finger. That is a betrayal. And you know what? That would have some validity. But I ask you, who in the hell gives a shit about the Washington Post endorsing Kamala Harris?
Yeah, like, who are the people that care about that? People that were voting for Kamala anyway. And you know what? Here's what I want to say, seriously. I hope every single person that has ended their subscription based on that, I hope those are the same people that move when Trump wins. Like, I hope those are the same people that leave the country. The people that are always threatening to leave. And I'm thinking,
you're trying to ask people to leave this country that can't even have the gall to leave Twitter when they're told that they can't have their confirmation bias. You think that?
I'm just saying, I'd love the traffic
Jamal,
to thin out.
I know one of the biggest shit libs on the Beltway is definitely Joan Walsh, and I know you saw her statement. She said, I am canceling my subscription from the Washington Post. And then somebody comes right onto her thread and says, you know what actually would make a difference if you decided you were going to protest? Canceling your subscription to using anything related to Amazon. And she said, that would be a tough one, but I'll have to think about it.
Yes, I'm not going to do that. That's too far. I don't. Well, okay. So I guess there are 2 points, right? In one sense, it's like, okay, whether papers should do it, and who cares? I don't know who listens, like, who reads the WAPO and thinks to themselves, okay, well, they endorse Kamala Harris, so I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. if any of those people that canceled their subscription were going to vote for Kamala Harris anyway. It didn't matter, right? And so I don't know what robot reads a newspaper and says, okay, well, the LA Times endorsed Kamala Harris, so I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris. I don't know if it works that way. I mean, I could be wrong. I think they are wildly overestimating their capabilities in getting people to do X or Y.